What are the top 10 most evil, awful, destructive, malevolent, hateful, harmful, and dangerous books of all time that have affected your life? Glad you asked. These are our choices in order by date, mostly. Number 10, The Prince, and I'm not talking about the 1999 guy. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in 1532. Oh, it was a charmer. It made diabolical deeds look downright noble. When it comes to politics, the ends justifies the means. Machiavelli, he began the popularization of pragmatism, utilitarianism, and the justification of evil, not to mention it gave birth to a really lousy perfume. Whatever. While this book might be the most read book in the Clinton household, the Bible never endorses pragmatism. If the means are sinful, then don't do it. Number 9, besides writing the world's first narcissistic autobiography, Jean-Jacques Rousseau penned the atrocious Discourse on the Origin and Foundations of Inequality of Men. Boing. Not pithy. In 1754, he proposes the idea that personal, private property is the source of all social inequality. Sound familiar? Let's remember, the idea of private property is biblical. That's why we're told to not covet. And that leads us to number 8, the winner of the 1848 Nightmare of the Year Book Award, Engels and Marx' Communist Manifesto. Everything about this stinker is anti-biblical. Marx is anti-private property. God isn't. Marx believed the way to make the world a better place was through violence. God disagrees. Marx classified humanity into 2 camps, the hoity-toity bourgeoisie and the lowly proletariat, or as we know them today, the oppressor and the oppressed. God classifies people as either born again or not. We can thank the Communist Manifesto for helping topple Western civilization, not to mention causing the death of tens of millions of people. And as long as we're talking about books with horrific consequences, that leads us to number 7, not 1, but 2 terrible books from Charles Darwin. In 1859, he, of course, wrote The Origin of Species. 1871, The Descent of Man. Here's just one quote that reveals the racist nature of Darwin and his works. At some future period, not very distant, as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Who are they? At the same time, the anthropomorphous apes will no doubt be exterminated. The break will then be rendered wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state than the Caucasian, and some ape as low as a baboon, instead of as at present between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Nice. The impact of Darwin can be seen in great 20th century accomplishments like, World War II, the eugenics movement in America, and forced sterilizations. It's a beaut. Not to mention, Darwin changed our view of humanity to nothing more than advanced monkeys and ultimately just walking bags of meat. No wonder so many kids are depressed these days. And as long as we're talking about the subject of eugenics, that brings us to number 6, Mein Kampf. The delightful tome, written by the man with the mustache, persuaded fellow citizens that some people are just plain better than others. He was a big fan of Charles Darwin, by the way. His book sat on his nightstand. Millions of people would disagree about inequality of races, and so would the Bible. God ascribes equal dignity and value simply by virtue of being an image bearer, not based on ethnicity or skin color. And that brings us to another awful racist book. Number 5, The Pivot of Civilization. Probably haven't heard of that one, by the founder of Planned Parenthood herself, Margret Sanger. It's Darwinism applied to human life and procreation. The consequences, just 60 million people being destroyed in the wombs of their mothers, eugenics, sterilization, and don't forget, racism. Why racism? Don't forget, Planned Parenthood was originally called the Negro Project. Number 4, The Future of an Illusion by cigar-smoking Sigmund Freud, 1927. The not-so-good doctor viewed religion, Christianity specifically, as the source of everyone's problem. It helped usher in our autonomous, self-driven, psychologized society. The Bible would take issue with Dr. Freud and remind him what is as obvious as the well-coiffed beard on his face. God isn't the problem. We are. But speaking of sexual twists, number 3, the Kinsey Reports, 1948, a heap of totally unscientific, completely manipulated data that sought to normalize every form of aberrant and abhorrent sexual behavior. You can thank Alfred for paving the way to normalizing pedophilia. He gave it a big thumbs up. Nice work, Al. God is furious at those who hurt children. Number 2, 1963's The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. We can thank Betty for second-wave feminism that focused on separating the procreative act from the procreative consequences, aka abortion. Without Betty, we wouldn't have third-wave feminism, which seeks to separate women from their gender, if such a thing were possible. If Betty had read the Bible, her views would not have been so radical and downright sinful. God is a big fan of complementary roles among the two and, dare I say, only two genders. And that brings us to the number 1 most awfulest book of all time. That's right, awfulest. All other religious holy books besides the Bible. Why? Because they portray themselves as divine revelation, and they're not. If you want to know the truth about all of life and godliness, trash these 10 horrible, hideous, evil, downright dangerous books, and read your Bible.